The morning Anne's brother clamped his hand on my shoulder and lectured me about maturity. I'd already been the most mature person in that room for 3 solid weeks. He just couldn't recognize it yet. But he would. They all would. My name is Derek Ford. I never went hunting for the truth. It found me, cracked me open, and left me bleeding on the kitchen floor of my own life. Let me rewind to where it all started. Friday, February 11th. Anne had left her old phone charging in the living room the night before, mumbled something about needing it for backup files. I shuffled downstairs at 7:20 that morning, made my coffee on autopilot, and settled at the kitchen table. The phone was just there, sitting on the counter like it belonged. I don't know why I picked it up. Morning fog, I guess. That mindless reach for whatever's closest when your brain hasn't fully booted up yet. The screen blazed to life. No passcode, and the iCloud backup had finished restoring overnight while we slept. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. I just picked up a phone, and in 4 minutes, my entire existence detonated. The messages loaded in waves. I read the first one, then the next. Then I stopped counting because counting would have required breathing, and I'd apparently forgotten how. 11 months. For 11 months, I'd been killing myself in Chicago, flying back and forth weekly, sometimes staying full weeks at a stretch, bleeding for Bodak's new branch. The biggest move Mike and I had ever made as partners. I was the one on the road, sweating over contracts, sleeping in hotel rooms, building our future with my bare hands. Mike held down the home office in Denver, or so I believed, while I was in Chicago building something for both of us. They were in Denver building something else entirely. 11 months of messages between my wife and a man I'd trusted with everything. A man I'd built something real with. A man who sat in the third row at our wedding and wept. Actually wept and said, "I'll never forget this. Derek, man, I've never seen two people more right for each other in my life." That man. I sat at that kitchen table for an hour and 10 minutes without moving. My coffee turned to ice. I didn't notice. I didn't blink. I just read every message, every lie, every stolen afternoon while I was in Chicago building a business, paying a mortgage, planning anniversary dinners, while my wife and my business partner constructed an entire secret universe and called it love. At 8:30, I heard Anne's alarm chirp upstairs. Her feet on the floor, water running, the familiar soundtrack of 4 years of mornings together. She's coming, I thought. Don't move. Don't breathe differently. Don't you dare let her see it on your face. She floated downstairs. "Derek, you're still home?" "Just tired," I said. "Didn't sleep well." She drifted to the coffee maker. "Want me to make a fresh pot?" She looked at me the way she always did in the mornings. Unhurried, soft, completely at ease. "What do you want for dinner tonight?" "Surprise me," I said. She smiled. I smiled back. That was the last normal conversation we ever had. She just didn't know it yet. The silence that screamed, "I want to be straight with you about what followed the discovery, because I think people imagine a man in my position either explodes like a bomb or crumples like paper, plates flying, screaming in the driveway at midnight, somebody's clothes ending up on the front lawn. That is not what happened. What happened was quieter, and in some ways, infinitely worse. What I felt wasn't rage, it was grief. That slow, suffocating, bone-deep grief of losing someone who's still standing right in front of you, still cooking in your kitchen, still sleeping on her side of the bed, still asking what you want for dinner like nothing in the world is wrong. Every morning I watched Anne eat breakfast and thought, this woman looked me in the eyes through a phone screen every single night I was in Chicago, and never once flinched. Every evening she kissed my cheek, and I thought, she probably texted him the moment I walked out the door. I gave myself 15 minutes. Every night after Anne fell asleep, I'd slip out to my truck, my 2021 F-150, honestly the one consistently good decision I made during this entire nightmare. Parked right there in my own driveway, lights off, engine off, just me and the darkness, and 15 minutes to feel everything I couldn't afford to feel inside that house. The betrayal, the humiliation, the specific surgical pain of realizing that while I was sacrificing comfort and time and presence to build something for our future, they were using my absence as their playground. 15 minutes. Timer on my phone. Then I'd go back inside because I had work to do. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of normal mornings and normal dinners and normal conversations while I moved like a man with a plan that nobody around me could see. The confession that wasn't. Then March 2nd arrived, Sunday evening. The Avalanche game was on. I'd been looking forward to it all week. Anne turned the TV off. "Derek, I need to tell you something." "I know," I thought. "I've known for 3 weeks. But go ahead. Take your time. The Avalanche game will be on again Thursday." What I said was okay. She was already crying before she even started, which told me exactly how she'd planned this conversation to go and exactly what she expected my reaction to be. "I made a mistake," she said. "A terrible mistake, and I am so sorry, and I need you to just hear me out before you say anything." "Okay," I said. She told me about the affair with Mike, called it a moment of weakness that got completely out of hand. 11 months is not a moment. A moment is burning your grilled cheese. A moment is saying the wrong thing at a dinner party. 11 months is a deliberate, daily, conscious decision made over and over and over again by two people who knew exactly what they were doing and chose to keep doing it. But I let her talk. Then she told me she was pregnant, 3 months along, Mike's child. There it is, I thought. There's the real reason for this conversation. Not guilt, not conscience. The calendar ran out. "I know this is devastating," she said, voice cracking, "and I know I have absolutely no right to ask you for anything, but this baby is innocent in all of this, and I just need you to—" "How long have you known?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "About the pregnancy. How long have you known?" A pause. Just long enough to tell me she'd hoped I wouldn't ask that specific question. "About 6 weeks," she said quietly. 6 weeks. She'd known for 6 weeks. Sat across from me at the dinner table for 6 weeks. Said good morning for 6 weeks. Video called me in Chicago for 6 weeks with that same soft expression and asked how my day went, knowing. I nodded slowly, let the silence sit between us for a long moment. "Okay," I said finally. "I need some time to process this. Derek, I'm not yelling, Anne. I just need some time to think." She cried harder. I could tell she mistook my calmness for the beginning of forgiveness. She was wrong. The family tribunal, 4 days later, her entire family showed up. All of them. Linda, her mother, Terrence, her brother, Aunt Gloria, who nobody specifically invited, but who has never in her life missed a family crisis and had absolutely no intention of starting now. They came through my front door and arranged themselves in my living room like a panel of judges who hadn't read the case file. Linda sat across from me with her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Derek, you are such a good man. This situation is painful. We all know, but the child is completely innocent in all of this." "I completely agree," I said. She blinked. She'd clearly prepared for resistance. "Anne needs support right now," she continued, carefully recalibrating. "And we just hope that you can find it in your heart to—" "Linda," I said her name gently, warmly, like I was talking to someone I genuinely cared about, which, 4 years in, I truly did. "I hear everything you're saying, every single word. I just need a little more time to figure out what kind of man I want to be in this situation." She reached across and patted my hand. "That's all we're asking, sweetheart. That's all." Then Terrence stepped forward. Former college linebacker. A man who's moved through his entire life on pure confidence and a loud voice. Arms folded across his chest, jaw set like he'd already decided how this conversation was going to end before he walked through my front door. He looked at me the way people look at someone they've already written off. "Look, man," he said, "I'm just going to be straight with you." "Please," I said. "You stay. You work through this. You're the bigger man. You're a hero. Everybody respects that." He paused for effect. "But you leave, you're just another man who couldn't handle pressure, who walked away from his family when things got hard. And that is your legacy." He said it like he was handing me a lifeline, like he'd solved the whole thing just by showing up. I looked at him, then at Linda, then at Aunt Gloria, who was sitting on my couch eating my crackers with zero invitation and absolutely zero apology. She'd helped herself to my remote control and had the audacity to look completely comfortable. 4 years I'd known this woman, and she still couldn't remember my name without looking at Anne first. But sure, Gloria, make yourself at home. Those are good crackers, too. I took a slow breath and looked back at Terrence. You know what, Terrence? I said quietly. You're absolutely right. I really need to think carefully about what kind of man I want to be. He nodded, satisfied, shoulders dropping like he just closed a deal he'd been working on all week. The room settled. Linda exhaled. Even Aunt Gloria paused her chewing for a respectful moment. And right there, in that living room, with Anne's family sitting across from me looking relieved and proud of themselves, I want to tell you what none of them knew. Not Linda with her folded hands, not Terrence with his linebacker shoulders, not Aunt Gloria with her cracker dust fingers on my remote control. None of them knew that I had already met with Helen Spencer, the most methodical family law attorney in Denver, not once, but twice. That the divorce papers were not just drafted, but ready. That sitting in my home office upstairs was a color-coded folder containing 22 documented instances of company card fraud that would make any judge in Colorado sit up straight in their chair. None of them knew that the man sitting across from them, calm, measured, nodding agreeably, had already made every single decision that mattered. They thought they were talking to a man standing at a crossroads. They were talking to a man who had already crossed, signed the paperwork, and was simply waiting for the right moment to let them feel it. That moment was coming, and they would all feel it. The quiet work. Let me take you back to those 3 weeks of silence between February 11th and March 2nd. Because while Anne was going about her mornings and Terrence was rehearsing his linebacker speech, and Aunt Gloria was probably already planning which of my snacks she was going to eat uninvited, I was busy. Very quietly, very deliberately, very busy. Day 3 after the discovery, I called Helen Spencer. She carries the energy of a woman who has heard every single lie ever told inside a marriage and stopped being surprised by any of them. I sat across from her desk and laid everything out. She didn't gasp, didn't flinch, didn't offer me a single sympathetic head tilt or a box of tissues from the corner of her desk. Just picked up her pen and started writing on a yellow legal pad with a cap that had been chewed completely flat. How long ago did you find the messages? 3 days. Have you confronted her? No. She looked up over her glasses. Have you told anyone? No. She asked serious questions. I answered. She put the pen down flat on the pad. Stop talking and start documenting. I liked her immediately. She walked me through the process. Colorado is an equitable distribution state. Marital assets get divided fairly, not necessarily equally. She told me to gather 4 years of financial records, bank statements, investment accounts, property documents. Then she leaned forward slightly and said, and if there's a business involved, I need everything. Every contract, every expense report, every clause, and every agreement you have ever signed. She didn't know it yet, but that was the single most important sentence spoken in that entire meeting. The divorce filing was just the opening move. The real game was the business. Mike and I had built Bodak's design group from nothing. 2 freelance designers who got tired of working for other people. Pulled our savings in 2017, signed the lease, and built something genuinely worth being proud of. Strong client roster. Real revenue. A Chicago branch that was ahead of its first-year projections. I built that. We both did. But I kept the books. I managed the finances. I knew every contract, every clause, every single dollar that moved in and out of that business. So when I started going through years of business records with the focused, unhurried energy of a man who has absolutely nothing left to lose, I found things. Hotel charges on the company card. Nothing enormous individually. $180 here, $240 there, but consistent. Monthly. 11 months straight. Every single one filed under client entertainment. I pulled the business calendar. Every single charge fell on a day Mike had blocked out as client meeting offsite. We didn't have clients that required that many offsite meetings. Oh, Mike, I thought. You used our company card, our card, while I was in Chicago building our future. You were billing your hotel rooms to our business. I printed everything. organized it into a folder with color-coded tabs like I was preparing a quarterly report for an accountant, labeled it Business Expense Audit, because that felt cleaner and more quietly devastating than labeling it what it actually was: evidence. 22 documented instances. All on company time, all on company money, all mine now. The clause that changed everything. Years back, when Mike and I founded Bodax Design Group, we drafted a partnership agreement with a business attorney named Gerald. Gerald was thorough. Gerald was meticulous. Gerald was, in retrospect, the unsung hero of this entire story and deserves a steak dinner at minimum. Because buried in Section 14, subsection C of that partnership agreement, a document we both signed and probably neither of us had read carefully since 2017, was a clause that Gerald had quietly insisted on including. In the event that either partner is found to have utilized company assets, resources, or time for personal conduct that constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty or professional ethics, the non-offending partner reserves the right to trigger immediate dissolution of the partnership and assume primary rights over intellectual property, client contracts, and operational assets. Helen took her glasses completely off and set them on the desk. Derek, the company card charges alone constitute misuse of company assets. Combined with the calendar documentation, 22 documented instances, I said. She looked at me for a long moment over the desk. You've been very busy. I smiled. The dissolution. I sent Mike the dissolution notice on Thursday, March 19th. Certified mail to the office and to his home address simultaneously. Helen sent the formal legal notice at the exact same moment, so there was no window, not even a narrow one, for confusion, delay, or a phone call that might complicate things. I didn't call him, didn't text him, didn't give him the dignity of a face-to-face confrontation or a speech about what he'd done to me. No anger, no drama, no closure conversation where he gets to explain himself and I have to sit there and listen. Just a legal document, precise, airtight, quietly catastrophic, landing in his mailbox on an ordinary Thursday morning like an earthquake nobody felt coming. Mike called me 4 times that day. I watched my phone light up each time, didn't answer once. His 5th attempt was a text. Derek, come on man, we can talk about this. Don't blow up everything we built over this. Everything we built. Over this? I read that message twice, slowly, put my phone face down on the desk, and went back to my lunch. That was the last communication I ever acknowledged from Mike. Not because I was too angry to respond, not because I had nothing to say, but because some people don't deserve the dignity of your reaction. Under the dissolution terms, I walked away with the intellectual property, every logo, every brand system, every design asset Bodax had ever created. I got the primary client list, representing roughly 70% of annual revenue. I got the office lease. I retained Jasmine, my best project manager, who had called me 2 days after the dissolution notice and said simply, "Please tell me you're building something new," and David, our senior designer, both of whom had watched everything unfold from their desks and jumped ship the moment I called. They both said yes before I finished the sentence. What did Mike get? The company name, Bodax Design Group, the name, the LinkedIn page with 400 followers, and a mission statement that no longer had any meaning. That was the last communication I ever acknowledged from Mike. Not because I was too angry to respond, not because I had nothing to say, but because some people don't deserve the dignity of your reaction. Under the dissolution terms, I walked away with the intellectual property, every logo, every brand system, every design asset Bodax had ever created. I got the primary client list, representing roughly 70% of annual revenue. I got the office lease. I retained Jasmine, my best project manager, who had called me 2 days after the dissolution notice and said simply, "Please tell me you're building something new," and David, our senior designer, both of whom had watched everything unfold from their desks and jumped ship the moment I called. They both said yes before I finished the sentence. What did Mike get? The company name, Bodax Design Group, the name, the LinkedIn page with 400 followers, and a mission statement that no longer had any meaning. I genuinely hope it was worth it, Mike. I genuinely do. The truth spreads now, the family. This is the part people always imagine incorrectly. They picture a dramatic confrontation, a group chat explosion, a Sunday dinner where someone throws something across the table and somebody else films it on their phone and it ends up on the internet. That is not what I did. What I did was quieter and far more permanent. I reached out to a few members of Anne's family individually, not together, one at a time over 2 weeks. I asked to meet them privately for coffee, just to share some things before the divorce proceedings became public record and they heard everything secondhand. They all said yes. Linda first. We met at a coffee shop on Colorado Boulevard on a Tuesday morning. I arrived first, ordered 2 coffees, had the folder on the table when she sat down. I slid it across without a single word and let her read. She read for 4 minutes without speaking, then looked up slowly. What is this? I've highlighted the relevant dates. She looked back down. This date here, I said, turning a page gently. That's the weekend Anne told you she was visiting a college friend in Colorado Springs. You texted me that Saturday asking if she'd arrived safe. Remember? Linda stared at the page. She was in a hotel in Aurora, I said. With Mike. Silence. And this one. I turned another page. March of last year, Anne borrowed $800 from you, said it was for car repairs. Linda's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The charge is from a jewelry store on Larimer Square. A watch. Men's. Definitely not mine. I closed the folder quietly and slid it back across the table. I'm not telling you this to hurt you, Linda. And I'm not telling you to turn you against your own daughter. She is still your daughter, and she always will be. But you sat in my living room and told me to accept the situation. I paused for just a moment. I thought you deserved to know the full situation before you formed that opinion. Terrence was a different kind of conversation. He kept trying to turn it into a debate, which was honestly completely on brand for him. Look, I'm not saying what Anne did was right. Good, I said, but relationships are complicated, and people make mistakes under pressure and... Terrence, I put the folder on the table between us. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to share information. You can do whatever you want with it. He opened the folder, got 3 pages in, and stopped. He stared at the page, something visibly shifting behind his eyes. Look, man, you told me, I said quietly, that if I left, I'd just be a man who couldn't handle pressure, who walked away from his family when things got hard. I leaned forward slightly. I need you to look at that folder, Terrence, and tell me who actually walked away from this family. He didn't say a word. I picked up my coffee. I don't need an apology. I just needed you to know the whole story. I left. Aunt Gloria got a phone call because I was not scheduling a 3rd coffee appointment for a woman who ate my good crackers without being invited and couldn't remember my name without a reference point. I summarized the situation clearly and efficiently. She gasped at the appropriate moments and said, "Lord have mercy," 4 times in 6 minutes. It was honestly the most productive conversation I'd ever had with her. After that, I stepped back completely and let the truth do what truth always does when it finally gets into a room full of people who are working with incomplete information. Within 2 weeks, Anne had stopped calling me entirely and started calling her mother instead, desperately, repeatedly, from what I gathered. The fortress she had counted on turned out to be full of people who now had questions she couldn't answer and receipts she couldn't explain away. The carefully constructed narrative she had maintained for 11 months was collapsing from the inside out, and I was nowhere near any of it. Not in the same room, not in the same conversation, not even in the same zip code. The aftermath. The divorce was finalized. I called Helen and thanked her for all of it. You were a good client, Derek. Organized, patient, disciplined. A brief pause. Don't ever need me again. God willing, I said. She laughed. It was the first time I had ever heard her laugh in all our times of working together. It suited her far more than I expected. I officially launched Derek Ford Creative. My name on the door. Simple, clean, no partner, no split decisions, no company card for anyone else to abuse. Just my name on a door and a client list that I had earned relationship by relationship over 6 years of showing up and doing the work. I launched with 6 of Bodax's former clients who came willingly, enthusiastically, without a moment's hesitation, because their loyalty had always been to me personally, not to a company name, not to Mike, to me, the guy who answered their calls and remembered their deadlines and flew back from Chicago on a red-eye once because a presentation needed last-minute changes. 3 of those 6 sent referrals within the first 60 days. I hired 4 people to start. Jasmine came first. She had called me 2 days after the dissolution notice with 3 words: "Tell me something." David came next, 2 additional designers, and before the end of 3 months, we had 11 active clients. Mike and Anne were together. Technically. I know this not because I was watching or tracking or paying any particular attention. I had significantly better things to do with my mornings. What I heard, through various people who no longer felt the need to stay neutral, was the entirely predictable portrait of 2 people who had built a relationship entirely on the electricity of secrecy, discovering that the electricity disappears completely the moment the secret is gone. When you remove the stolen afternoons and the thrill of deception and the shared excitement of getting away with something, what you're left with is just 2 people sitting across from each other at breakfast, knowing exactly what they're capable of, having to look at that every single day. They had a son, named him Sean. Sean is completely innocent in every part of this story. I want to be absolutely clear about that. Whatever his parents chose to do, that boy didn't select any of it. I hope he has a genuinely good life. I mean that without a single trace of anything other than sincerity. The phone call. Linda called me on a Friday evening in October. I was in my kitchen making pasta from scratch. Fresh tagliatelle, because apparently one of the personality developments that happens on the other side of a divorce like this is that you start making homemade pasta on Friday evenings and you choose to interpret that as personal growth rather than examine it too closely. I almost didn't answer. Derek, Linda, a long pause, the kind that costs something real to break. I owe you an apology. You don't have to. No, firm, decided. I do. I sat in your home and told you to accept a situation I didn't fully understand. I formed a strong opinion without knowing the complete truth, and you deserve better than that from me. I showed you because I thought you deserved the full picture, I said finally. Not to cause pain, not to turn anyone against anyone, just because you deserve to know. I know, she said quietly. I understand that now. How are you doing, Linda? She exhaled long and slow. Tired. We talked for a few more minutes, nothing heavy. She asked about the business. I asked about her sister, Aunt Gloria. When we finally hung up, I sat there in the quiet of my own kitchen for a long moment. I don't hate Anne. What she did was painful, but carrying that weight forever, that's her burden now. I put mine down a long time ago. Somewhere between the driveway and the 15-minute timer and the first morning I woke up in my own apartment and realized the quiet didn't feel like emptiness anymore. It just felt like mine. I went back to my pasta. What I want you to take from this, Anne's family told me to accept it and move on. They weren't entirely wrong. Acceptance is not the same as surrender. Moving on is not the same as doing nothing. And sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is refuse to perform his own destruction. Refuse to yell, refuse to beg, refuse to collapse into the version of himself that other people find easier to manage. You get quiet, and you get to work. Anne got her fresh start. Mike got every consequence he built for himself, one company card charge at a time. Terrence got a lesson about the assumptions he makes about men he hasn't fully read. Linda got the truth she deserved. And I got my life back. Built it into something better than anything I had before, better than anything any of them expected, better, honestly, than anything I had even imagined for myself. On those 15-minute nights, sitting alone in my truck, in my own driveway. If this story hit you somewhere deep, hit that like button and subscribe to Dad's Powerful Revenge for more real, raw, and unforgettable family stories. I'll see you on the next one.